Welcome to the regular planning commission meeting, Grand Blanc Township,
Michael,
September
I'll tell your
5th,
mother.
2019. We're going to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get to you.
Okay.
Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first bit of action this evening is Mr. Robertson's going to be sworn in as the planning commissioner.
Yes, so Mr. Robertson,
come forward?
please. We do this formally, Mr.
Very
Robertson.
good.
Do you swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Michigan, the laws of the Township of Grand Blanc, and those of the Planning Commission to the best of your ability?
I do.
Okay, if you would. I've marked it with orange for you to sign.
Okay, very good. There you go.
It's official.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
All right.
Thanks, Kathy.
You're very welcome. Every time you get a new me.
Planning commission members present this evening, we have Mr. Mansour, Ms. Coulter, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Gellings, Mr. Bandersky, Mr. Horsha, Mr. Yancho, and our planning director, Mr. Lloyd. First item on our agenda is approval of this evening's agenda. Any changes by anyone?
Do you need a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate for me to make a motion?
Yes.
Then I'll move the minutes of the June 6th meeting.
Agenda.
Oh, excuse me, approval of the, I'm sorry, approval of the agenda. I'm sorry, very good, yes. I'll move the approval of the agenda.
Support for that?
I'll support. Good.
Yeah, Mr. Horsha, you can do it by a fraction of a second.
There you go.
Motion by Mr. Robertson, support by Mr. Horsha to approve this evening's agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 8-0. Next item would be approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of June 6. Mr. Bandersky.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the draft of the meeting minutes, and there is one minor correction pointed out to me this evening, which really doesn't change much. So on that basis, I'm going to recommend that the meeting minutes, as it will be amended, be approved for the meeting of June 6, 2019.
Is there a motion?
Support.
Motion to approve the minutes with the minor adjustment that I think actually Mr. Yancho had suggested. Support for that, Mr. Johnson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed, motion passes 8-0. Opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address the planning commission meeting, we have no. We don't have any public hearings, so if they want to address us on anything, now would be the time. Okay. We will close the public comment, bring it back up to the planning commission. Correspondence, we have a couple of planning and zoning news. Both of those have articles in there on marijuana.
Yes, sir.
Any other correspondence? No old business, we'll move on to new business. I understand it's time for election of officers already, Mr. Lloyd?
Yes, indeed.
How do we want to proceed on this?
You would just open the floor for all of the different positions.
So we have chair, vice chair, and secretary. Correct.
Yes.
Regarding any of those?
Well, and that's how we would do it. You just open the floor for nominations for the chair.
Do you want to volunteer?
I think we have a pretty good volunteer already.
I would nominate Mr. Gellings to continue in the chairmanship of the planning commission.
Take a vote?
Any other nominations?
Move the nominations be closed and a unanimous ballot be cast.
Second.
If that's appropriate.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
There's only one person who didn't weigh in on that.
That's right. Said it was 7-0. All right, Vice Chair, we have Mr. Brown.
Vice Chair. So we'll open the floor for nominations for the Vice Chair. And they don't have to be here.
Do you have to be present to win?
No.
That's what I
No.
That's a good reason to win.
Bad meeting to be absent from.
I'll nominate Mr. Brown.
I support.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay.
And then for
Secretary.
Secretary, Mr. Bandersky's been doing a great job. I'd like to nominate him.
Second.
We got a first and a second.
All right. All
Move
those in
that the
favor?
nominations be closed and
Okay.
the vote declared unanimous.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 8-0.
That was pretty easy.
All right.
Perfect.
That was easy.
We just need to pick on Ed one more time, I think.
Zoning Board of Appeals to represent the planning.
That has been Ed Brown.
Yep. What I hear is doing a great job.
Awesome.
And
Wonderful.
seems to enjoy it.
I would nominate Ed to continue in that assignment. He, as Mr. Gillen said, he's done a great job. And has quite a bit of history.
Support by Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Anybody else
Support.
want to oppose him? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Passes 8-0 again. Brings us to master plan implementation discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm hoping to get some feedback from this group this evening as we move forward on our master planning process. I'll let you know, we had a meeting just a little while ago with the steering committee and the consultants to go over our survey questions and a couple of the sections, the demographic section, the background section, as well as the existing land use component of the plan. And so we're working our way through that. I have a few things here and there that'll need to be adjusted. The survey's ready to go out here in the next probably couple of weeks. Within 2 weeks, it'll be out and going. The other element of all of this is one where we'll be looking for each of you, I would hope, to participate in maybe running one of the, it's called a meeting in a box, where we'll have you take materials out with you to a group that you've defined, present, some conversation with them, and then have them go through the exercises of identifying the areas in the town that they're interested in from a planning standpoint. And that'll give this group an opportunity. We're also asking the board, other members of staff, and anyone else who might be interested in taking on one of those meeting in a box assignments. We are going to have some booths and things set up. I think Mr. Manser might be doing one as early as this next week. And that'll be at different events that might be going on. So we're looking to try to find ways to reach out and communicate with folks with our master plan that we haven't necessarily done in the past. But we're looking to get that input that helps to make that master plan as good a document as we can make it. So that work is well underway. And a component of that is the implementation plan. That's really kind of at the very end of everything. You put your plan together and then you identify the township's goals and our objectives and the things we really want to do, and we identify, those things. What are we going to be doing? What are we looking at? And we're also going to be looking at things like, well, how do we get them done? So the implementation plan really helps to spell out what we're doing. And I know I promised everybody that I wasn't going to give you a bunch of stuff, but this first one here is this is our current implementation plan. And, if you want to just thumb through it when you get it, you'll see, if you go to the last handful of pages, you'll see it's very, very simple and straightforward. And I'm sure not looking to make anything more complicated unnecessarily. But if you take a look at this, you'll see that it's I would say, maybe unnecessarily simple. And we'll just start, once you all got them, when you get them, if you just turn the page real quick. we'll start to see what I'm referring to, and that is you've got, you've got your action items, you've got, the first one is the smart growth strategies. We'll just start with that. And then as you can see in there, you've got a short-term and a long-term. What is it? Is it a short-term or a long-term goal? Well, these are identified as being long-term, but they also identify a few of them as having like a year 2 time period expected for completion. It says to create a resource list to help residents find information. Well, that might be helpful, but out of all of the commissioners who are here tonight who maybe were around when this was adopted, I guess I would just want to ask the question of how often this has been looked at, the master plan or the implementation plan. And if it's not, if the answer is what I would expect is that it's not, then what I'm proposing tonight is that maybe we come up with a plan that's a little bit different than we've used in the past. Here, hand those out if you don't mind. And this will be of your own creating. Now, let's face it, our consultants are doing this for us. So it's not like I'm asking you to create this plan, but what I am doing is looking for your feedback and the kinds of things you might like to have in the plan. And I have a couple of ideas that I'd like to talk with you about too. The first one is the plan will have an implementation plan. There will be a component of this plan that says here's what we're going to do, and generally some time frames within which to do them. What I would like to do is to have that get broken down a little bit further into maybe a little bit more detail in regards to the departments that might be involved, the individuals that might be involved. Is this the public who's going to need to do this? Is this based on the development activity out there? Or is this based on us building infrastructure? What is it? And I would like for us to ride herd on that. I'd like for this body to be the one to ride herd on this, because you're supposed to. This is your plan. This is the Planning Commission's master plan. And so the reason that I would like to detail that out is because we do an annual report every year, and it's a pretty good report. If you guys remember the last year, we added a few more things to it than we did the years before. And what I'm going to suggest is that when we get together in January to talk about this annual report that we do, and we review everything we've done, all of our projects, all of our activities, I'd also like for us to take a good hard look at what we've done to implement the master plan at that very same time. And I would like for us to have a checklist which we'll build into the plan that will show us, it'll give us a framework, a matrix, if you will, that we can utilize to refer back to, identify the things that we're looking to pursue and to concentrate on, and then work towards those goals, get them done, work with the commission on that. We'll probably have to form a committee or two here and there for different projects that we might be working on. But I think that that's all well worth it. So what I'm looking at doing is expanding the annual report to include activity associated with our implementation of the master plan. And I believe that those pieces really go together, hand in hand. And I think that they work. And, I'm really, as I say those things, I'm looking for some feedback to make sure that you guys think that generally speaking the concept is a decent one, that you think that those pieces maybe do align and they could work well by bringing them together, and then coming up with some formatting and other ways of reporting this information out. The third leg of this stool that I'm building here is this. I would like in the future, when I prepare reports for you and or prepare reports for the board, I would like to identify in those reports how this project, if it does, helps to implement the master plan. So in other words, let's say somebody wants to come in and rezone their property. Our master plan shows that, we've got a piece of land that's, commercial, it's got a commercial designation, but it's residentially zoned. We know we want to have that consistent. So if somebody was to come in and change that to a commercial designation, that in itself would be implementation of the master plan. Now, I realize that's pretty simple, but that's the way it goes. Those are just little checklists, just little activities that happen throughout the year. That's how you implement it. It doesn't mean that the Planning Commission has to be the only body who's doing something to implement it. Private development helps to implement our master plan because that's how we set it up. We're saying we want to see these kinds of developments in these areas, and when folks come in and they build those developments in those areas, they're helping us to implement our master plan. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to point those things out and identify and keep the relationship between the master plan and what we do from a zoning standpoint, in a development standpoint, keep it relevant and keep it in front of us, because as I just said, and I saw a few smirks, and I won't point out anybody by name, but I know every community struggles with keeping that master plan in front of you and keeping it fresh. And this is the best idea that I can come up with. And I've used this technique before. The one that I've used that I think works well is putting language in the reports that identify the provisions of the master plan that a certain project might help to implement or helps to perpetuate the master plan. Or by all means, if it's contrary, we're going to point that out too. But that's one thing that I noticed. We don't talk a lot about the master plan and whether or not a project is consistent with the goals and objectives of that. And I think the only way to do that is to take it upon yourselves to make it part of what we do all the time. And that'll be work that I would be doing. It's not like I would be asking the Planning Commission to take on additional exercises, but I would be hoping and expecting that the Commission would be looking at that analysis and paying attention to that, the implementation plan and making sure that it is getting done. I could see us doing two things here to help support that. One is to maybe do an annual report committee of sorts, or combine them, do an implementation plan, master plan implementation plan subcommittee or something, because that's really that's the piece that just keeps perpetuating after we get it completed. It's really the only thing that's going to keep moving is that implementation plan. So I'd like for us to do something like that. But I guess to start, I'd just like to make sure that the idea that I have about incorporating these things together makes sense, and you guys have some interest in seeing how that goes, and hopefully you have some questions that I could answer tonight.
Mr. Mansur?
Sure. So, Mark, I think that's, in general, what you're saying is really good suggestions here. And it's true that, and I sit on the Township Board, we don't often refer back to the master plan when we make our decisions, so keeping it in front of us is a great idea. I would encourage the use, just like you do with the site plan commentary that you do, kind of the write-up, that we just include a question on there about relevance or interaction with the master plan. So that's simple enough, right? Maybe
Yes.
just one more item to add. The other thing is that you've had a lot of experience, and I think that the second implementation integration example that you passed out is closer to what I would view as a more actionable plan than the first one you handed out. And in the work that I do, we only accomplish things because we set specific, measurable, timed goals with accountable people to get them done. And so I know it's hard to do big goals in that area, but we ought to be able to break them down. And if we can do that and we can establish owners for these things, then I think
Right.
we can have a better level of accountability and hopefully accomplish things maybe more effectively than we have in the past.
Sure. Thank you. That's a nice way to summarize it as well. I appreciate that.
Anyone else want to comment? The other thing I was wondering about is, as you mentioned, we don't really look at this. Should we maybe on a quarterly basis just have an item on our agenda to look at the implementation plan?
You know what I'd like to do, and I'll make a note of this, but this would be a perfect thing to incorporate into our master plan, that we are actually going to bring it out and look, or we're going to do something with it quarterly or twice a year or something. It ought to be in that master plan. That could be part of the implementation strategy. That's another very good idea. And we may find that quarterly, might be a little more than we want, but to start, it might not be a bad idea, especially with a new master plan. A new master plan, starting out and making sure everybody's looking at it, reviewing it, reading it, that's probably a pretty good way to go. Because it's it's very common for the master plan document not to be referred to much. It's the document that gets put on a shelf, they say a lot. And it's a very valuable document. We're spending a lot of time, putting a lot of energy into a lot of effort to try to determine how we want to see this community grow. We ought to be paying attention to that, and using that to mark our success, or identifying where we were coming up a little short. So I do think that it's a good management tool, as well as just a great tool for the Planning Commission to have and to keep you on top of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still new, right? So I'm still learning, but I think the accountability piece of it is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And keeping it in front of the, commission here quarterly, I think the start would probably be a good way to do it until we get a little more comfortable with it. And then we can maybe look at going biannually. But no, I completely agree with what you guys are talking about. It's, definitely has to, we need the accountability piece, and we need it to constantly be refreshed and put in front of us.
I think what you'll see is that accountability is an important piece, and especially once you identify time periods, because, you turn the page, you get to the next year, you identify those things that need to be implemented. There's going to be some things that are going to come from other departments. Not everything's going to come from the planning department. There may be some things we need Public Works to do, or whoever, assessing, whatever the case is. So, as we move forward, we'll be able to identify those things that, it's adopted part of the master plan. These things need to be done, give people a time period to accomplish it. And it really isn't that hard. It just becomes a very good tool. It's not a bunch of extra work. It's not really. It actually can help you a lot at the end of each year if you're managing and tracking. And it does you a lot of good from a legal standpoint, too, to stay on top of it. I think Dave would attest to that.
Endersky?
And part of the accountability portion is having leads or champions for each of those.
That's right.
So that when that time comes, he or she is making sure that it comes together, not that he or she has to do it all,
Right.
but it comes together. And the more we review it, it's, when you have to give a report, you work at it,
Right.
If it's 3 months away, you wait for 2.5 months, what I do anyway. So the more we can do it, and to the point that we have meaningful things to report.
Yeah, I know that, one of the goals is to make this, an awesome master plan. And, as I've gone through it and looked at different things, this is just an element that's sorely missing. And, as I look at a few of the other ones that are out there, the one that I sent you with the boats on it, that's from Fenton. And it's pretty straightforward kind of a format. But there's a number of others out there too that can help you, depending on the complexity of the matrix you want to create, and it helps you break down maybe from planning commission, then you can identify the planning commission members, you can identify the public works and each, staff members, however it goes. So this can be whatever we want it to be.
I'll make maybe 2 more comments on that. First, I like the idea of the regular reviews, the accountable, but I think we ought to consider maybe limiting the amount of things we're going to go after here, so that we can really create some critical mass behind them, instead of diffusing the effort amongst things and then not really getting very far. And then the second point would be where there's a necessity, and most of this wouldn't need it, but where there's a necessity for a budget, that we get that identified very early. We're going to be getting our budget done in the next month or month and a half, so we won't really be able to do it for this year, but we should certainly have it set for the next one, where we may need some money to support the plan.
If I might, and I don't want to go too far with sort of my thinking on things, but ultimately what I'd like to see happen as we move to a newer, better master plan, and we're working harder and doing a better job on our capital improvements program, what I would like to see eventually is those documents come together, at least play off one another. The way that I've always looked at this is through a layering process. In other words, you've got a master plan that basically is your base, and all of your other plans, zoning ordinance, and other things need to line up with that. So there has to be, that horizontal or that vertical consistency between all of the documents. And that's one thing that you'll find out. Let's say, for example, we identify some area of town that we think ought to have higher density something in it. Well, clearly that's going to need infrastructure. So when we do the analysis to see if it has the infrastructure, when we do our capital improvement program, we recognize that it doesn't. We identify what it needs, and then that all gets coordinated together so that it's working together, and not, you got, like one of the things that happens far too often in historically is you've got a street crew over here that's out running around and they're fixing the streets and making it nice, so they repave a street. Next year, they got a sewer project going on, and those kinds of coordinations just need to be better, because you don't want to have to go in and tear up a street you just paved, whatever. So that's part of what the CIP and the coordination between that and the master plan can accomplish as well, is just to bring, the different agencies and departments within the township together and keep them working together better. So that's another step.
Comment, implementation, I think, is really the key. And I think as part of this process, we kind of need to narrow down the list and make it very specific, because I know in the past we kind of made some comments about this implementation plan from, I think, 2013, where some of it was very general, like encourage or promote, or, instead of develop specific guidelines, or, revise the ordinance or things like that. So I really think we should focus on a smaller list of very specific implementation projects. And then the other comment is, I know, at the beginning of the year, you developed a work plan for the year, which is a great idea. And then, that should obviously be consistent with the master plan. And then regular reviews during the year saying, okay, here's how we're, carrying out the work plan that we developed, or revising it if necessary. But, the work plan would be consistent with the implementation plan of the master plan.
Yeah, that's how I would envision it. I like that kind of thinking for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first comment as a new member, I'd say that I like the flow of this discussion, because I think the extent to which we can, well, first, obviously, having come up with a master plan, we obviously have to implement it, and we have to be seen to be implementing it. And I think it's important that we have that mechanism in place, that we're constantly in our conversations, in our dialogue, referencing the master plan, because I think we have an obligation to the public to illustrate to them that we, having established a master plan, that we're following it. I think how we conduct our business and how that business is conducted, on a regular basis, is what gives what we do credibility in the eyes of the public. And I think it's important that we develop the record of the activity of this planning commission, so that people can see it, those that would take an interest in it on a day in, day out basis, and or just so that we have an institutional memory from one year to the next, from one planning commission to the next, from one board to the next, about what we did, how we did it, and why we did it the way we did. So I think you've got a good drift here going as far as the suggestion.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Looking for it?
Yeah, this is good. I'll be working with the steering committee. I'll take some of the feedback from tonight, convey that to them when, we'll be getting to that implementation position before too long. And I would like to talk to that committee as well as our consultant about the possibility of, maybe having the commission be involved a little earlier in the review of that implementation plan instead of waiting until the project's over. I think it probably makes sense, because it is the piece that, like folks are recognizing, that really it's where the rubber hits the road. So that's how we can do that. Thank you.
Chair. Mr. Vandersky.
Question for Mr. Lloyd on your implementation pass out. You have a dark target and a light target. Can you distinguish the difference between those?
No, I can't.
Are they all dark?
There's,
You mean the blue or the yellow or the
No,
green?
I'm talking this.
Yeah, yours is a little different than mine. This is simply a legend that defines the importance of them. Green, yellow, or a different color. Or actually, if I could, it identifies the the issue, the area that they're talking, commercial, residential, whatever the case is, they're just in different colors.
No, my point here is on the target.
Yeah.
I think the color's just.
The color's different.
It's just that.
Mine's in color, so yours is coming out gray or whatever. Here, I'll show you what it is.
So they're all targets.
Nice.
It really is. See, these are green, these are yellow, and then these just show different when they copy to. I'm saving a few bucks.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Lloyd?
No, thank you.
Brief? We on to committee reports already, it looks like?
Yeah, we're ready.
Mr. Mansour, Township Board.
Well, I will carry on and also be brief and say that Township Board continues to thank the Planning Commission for their hard work.
Mr. Lloyd, did you have anything else for planning and zoning?
No, I don't need to add anything.
So, question for Mr. Mansour. We didn't do anything for 3 months.
What's that?
We haven't had a meeting. So we should carry on with that type of hard work?
Sometimes. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Thank
No,
you
sir.
for your-
Pass is as good as a bid, right?
Son of a gun.
Mr. Brown is not here for,
No, we do have items coming up at the ZBA for their next meeting. Haven't had a ZBA meeting for a while either.
site plan review. I haven't been present at one in a while.
Right.
We had,
There
We
was
had two.
one, yeah.
one was the Zito Brothers,
Yes.
where they're the old Wicks Lumber Company. We're gonna use that to storage a lot of their equipment and build an office building at the front part of that. A new building at the front part of that. So that's the plan there.
And a new 20,000-foot building out back, storage, warehouse, maintenance building.
In addition to what's already there.
Yep.
You did quite a bit of earth moving already.
Yeah, we stopped them. We had to go tell them to knock it off. They weren't very happy.
Okay, and then the other one was the Blessing, the new plumbing shop that's gonna be on the corner of Baldwin and the Saginaw, behind that little brick building. They'll buy the house there and tear it down and put it in an office building. They're
Showroom.
removed from their facility that they now have, put all their stuff in that building. Very nice looking.
Oh, they're both
Facility,
beautiful.
yeah,
The
both.
Zito building and this Blessings building
So-
here are gorgeous.
The site plan group approved both of those. A couple of things that had to be done are corrected, but nonetheless,
For the Zito, the Blessing project was approved 100% and, you know, they're in plan review now.
yeah. So, two nice additions to the township.
Point that out.
So I haven't seen the plans for the Blessing project, but will all their vehicles and trailers be parked indoors then?
No,
No?
they will not be parked indoors. They will be parked on the, let's see, on the east side of the building, as I remember the parking
East,
lot.
yes.
They will have an entranceway for their trucks off Saginaw Street, just south of Baldwin Road, where the main store will be.
I think that's where the drive is, that might be where the drive is now for the house.
It might be. But their plan is that all their trucking will come in through that way, and customers will come in off Baldwin Road. But it'll be outside parking.
So are there two houses coming down, one on Baldwin and
No.
just the one on Baldwin?
Yeah.
So there'll be screening and so on, so for their trucks? and-
Yeah, I'm happy to send that out to the entire commission. I guess when you're mentioning it, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, well, I probably ought to send that out to everybody. The site plan review committee gets it. It's easy for me to push a button and send it to everybody. I'm glad to do that. I'm sorry I didn't think about that
Both from
earlier. Yeah.
Zito.
Yeah, we'll do that right away.
Thank you, Mr. Vandersky. We do have site plan review next week, I believe.
On the 19th.
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
For a building on Hill Road?
Yes, yeah, new, it's a medical office.
This is a question, a different subject, Mr. Lloyd. The new building on Saginaw Street across from Leo's, Coney Island there between AutoZone
One
and Omega,
starting right now.
it's starting now. I thought at one time that was going to be an O'Reilly's auto store.
It was. It was approved as an O'Reilly's, the footprint, or the occupant was gonna be O'Reilly's.
Yes.
The O'Reilly's decided they weren't gonna be able to use it because they weren't gonna be allowed to have a left turn lane. And that's due to the slope of the road there on Saginaw. They actually had to do some trimming, if you will, modifications to the property south of them in order to manage, to create enough of a line of sight to not be a problem coming out of that driveway. When they came in, we approved them as O'Reilly's at the Site Plan Review Committee meeting.
Yes, I remember that.
Yep, and then subsequent to that, they came in for a change. I sent a note out to everybody. And the point that I made, and the point that's in the ordinance is, and if you remember during that site plan review, we had one of those conversations from the elder Johnson, who was here at the time, when he said, well, that looks good for the back of the building, well, what about the front, kind of a thing. And what we ended up doing in the site plan review committee meeting was getting them to put in the knee wall high cut split face.
Upgrade, yeah.
Yeah, upgraded the materials. It was going to be a metal building, basically. And of course, that's unacceptable. And so we worked through the details of the materials in the plan. And part of the ordinance reads that if a developer changes their site plan, that, I can't change that for them unless if they were to decrease the quality, or if they were to change, decrease parking. There's a few things that I'm unable to approve with site plan amendments. Very limited. I can only approve if they're less than 10% expansion or a certain square footage, no modifications to parking. And if they improve and increase the quality of the materials in the exterior of the building, which they did. Now the entire building will be brick, and it'll have quite a nice appearance to it compared to what we originally had.
I just missed that for some reason. That's why I asked the question.
Yep.
I could never understand why they put O'Reilly's right next to AutoZone.
Well,
Could
that's
be-
O'Reilly's choice.
Yeah, oh, I know that.
That's like Sam's, where they like to be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Do you know, what I probably do, but who's going to occupy the building?
It'll be multiple tenants.
So it's going in as vacant for rent? Or
No,
for
they
lease?
have a couple of tenants. I think there's a Pita
Way.
Way.
Pita
Pita
Way.
Way is one, and I'm so sorry I don't have their list of tenants, but that Pita Way was one of them that was going.
How many different occupants are?
It depends on how they break it down. It's their building to subdivide however they choose. It's still 20,000 feet, and I think they're starting with 5 units.
Mr. Yancho?
Mr. Lloyd, can you inform us what's going on with the Kroger gas station?
Well, we have plans in, so they're in plan review. They haven't stopped that. It does take a while, and it's really up to them, timing-wise, on how they want to move. But we have begun plan review. Matter of fact, we started pretty soon. We're done with plan review. It's really them pulling the trigger on timing. And know what their thoughts are about their timing. But I don't think they're going to be tearing down that motel this year, between now and the end of this year.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to be raised.
Sorry, say it again.
Any question about where it's located?
I got it answered, thank you. I was surprised. I'm thinking, okay, it's a Kroger gas station, but it's not associated.
Not near
Right.
Kroger, yes, it's
Yeah.
different,
Okay.
separated from it. Same in Davison, they have same thing in Davison.
Oh, yes, on the corner of
Exactly.
Main and, yep, and then 15,
You
yep.
can still use your Kroger points.
Mr. Roden?
Ready for
Anything else from committee reports?
No, sir.
If not, We've got a motion to adjourn?
Well, if I could, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't want to get in the way of adjournment for too long,
No.
but I just wanted to take a moment before we adjourn to thank the Township Supervisor and the Township Board again for the opportunity to serve on this Planning Commission. As many of you know, I've been honored to serve the community of Grand Blanc Township for 20 years at the County Commission, the State House, and the State Senate level. This is my first service at the Township level, and I'm very much looking forward to it and excited to be a part of planning this township's future. And I just wanted to place that on the record in my first meeting, how delighted I am to be here. I look forward to learning from all of you and your experience on this board as a member, and I just wanted to make that very clear for the record, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Bandersky, support by Mr. Robertson. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0. We are adjourned at 7:43.